In this video, we're going to talk about how to prep for a video shoot and then also how to successfully execute on that mobile video shoot so you have great looking footage that you can take into the edit room and edit together an awesome video. So first, let's just take a look at two important things that you should consider when you're in the preparation stage of your mobile video. First, you're going to make sure you want to have enough space on your mobile device to actually record that video. Now, the good news is cell phone videos don't take up a lot of space, so as long as you're not shooting like a feature-length video and as long as your phone has a good amount of space, you should be good. Typically, phones record at about 130 megabytes for every 1 minute of 1920 by 1080 high definition video. So that comes to about 1 gig of footage for 7 to 8 minutes of video. Now that could change depending on your phone, but that's typically what cell phone videos capture footage at. The second tip when it comes to preparing for your mobile shoot is to make sure that your phone is fully charged from the get-go. As well, you should bring a portable charger with you because if you do run out of phone battery, you can just plug in that portable charger and you're good to go. The consequences of running out of battery in the middle of a mobile shoot shouldn't be overlooked either. For one, if you're dealing with other people and you're dealing with their schedules, they might not have time to wait for you to charge your phone, and you could also run into continuity errors if the daylight changes too much. Okay, so once you're well prepared for your shoot, there's a lot of things that you can do on the actual shoot to make sure you're getting the best possible footage. Now we are about to jump into a lot of tips here, but just keep in mind that they can be applied to any type of video camera and not just phone cameras. That said, each of these tips should really be looked at closely if you are shooting on a mobile camera. Okay, so the first tip is to make sure that your camera settings are correct before you start shooting. Now some of this might be repeating a little bit what you heard in a previous video, but you definitely want to make sure that you have these settings correct. So first of all, you want to consider whether you're shooting in automatic mode or manual mode. Automatic mode will be easiest and will provide great results, but if things aren't looking right on the screen, feel free to just switch to manual and dial in the correct settings so that everything looks good on the screen. If you do shoot in manual, there's just a couple settings to really make sure are correct. ISO is one of the most important things. Just make sure ISO setting is as low as possible, while of course making sure the image is still bright enough. Besides that, another really important setting is white balance. So make sure your image isn't looking too blue or too orange. Just make sure you're bouncing to whatever the dominant light source in the room is. A great way to get white balance correct is to actually hold up a piece of paper in front of the camera and use the automatic white balance setting in your app if your phone app does allow for that. Okay, lastly, when it comes to frame rate, 24 frames per second or 30 frames per second will work fine. Other than that, higher frame rates like 60 frames per second are typically reserved for slow motion footage. So 24 or 30 will work just fine. So the second tip is to frame correctly. So the biggest thing here is just be conscious of if you want to shoot vertical or horizontal. Also, when it comes to framing, just try to use correct framing techniques. So don't have too much headroom. You can use the rule of thirds as well to your advantage. It's also good to shoot at eye level generally to whatever you're shooting. So if you're shooting somebody talking like this, having the camera at the same level as the person's eyes, or sometimes even if you're shooting just like objects, for example, a mug on a table, it can be advantageous to kind of go down to the eye level of whatever that object is. Also, try to keep your horizons level. So look at the horizontal lines in your video and just make sure that they're nice and level. And lastly, if you do want to zoom in, try not to use the digital zoom on your camera. If you want a closer up image, just actually physically move the camera closer, because zooming in using the app is most likely just gonna degrade the quality of your image. The third tip is to light your shots. So the main thing with lighting is just to make sure that you have enough light so that your camera's image quality is up to par. Cell phones especially aren't gonna do well in low lighting situations. They're gonna look pretty grainy. So just have enough light. And besides that, even if you do already have enough light, sometimes adding that extra light can help to give your video a professional look. Lighting shots for a video is definitely an art in itself, so you don't have to get too crazy here, but just make sure that the lighting isn't too obvious. And also just make sure that the color of your light is good. So if you're shooting maybe against a blue lighting background, like from a window, and you shined an orange light on somebody's face, that's not gonna look quite right. So just make sure that the lighting doesn't stand out too much in your video. The fourth tip is on recording audio. So this is probably the most important tip that we're gonna talk about here, is just to get good quality audio. And pretty much what that comes down to is recording audio with a dedicated microphone. So rather than recording the audio from your phone, you're actually placing a microphone close to whoever is talking or to whatever the audio source is. Besides using a dedicated mic for audio, just take note of the location that you're in, that it's not too echoey, or that there's no unwanted noise like a noisy street outside, or maybe the loud hum of an old fridge or something like that. So just make sure that the location is also suitable for audio. All right, the fifth and final tip is to pay attention to your camera's stabilization and also motion. So when it comes to stabilization, it's really up to whatever look you're going for in your video, but it pretty much comes down to whether you're gonna hold the phone with your hands or you're gonna attach it to a tripod. Using a tripod and stabilizers like that can really help to give your videos a professional and clean look. So if that's what you're going for, we would definitely recommend using that. When it comes to actually adding motion to your shots, just simply adding motion can be a really good idea to, again, keep them looking professional. But when you do add motion, this is where you wanna be careful to keep them smooth, especially when you're walking. And as mentioned in a previous video on gear, if you are walking with your camera, using a gimbal stabilizer like the DJI Osmo Mobile can be very helpful. If you're not sure, the safest option is to use a tripod and only use your hands if you're an experienced camera operator. That covers 5 major areas to pay attention to when you go to shoot your next mobile video. Use the right camera settings, use the right framing technique, record good audio, add lighting to your videos, and finally use camera support to keep your shots nice and stable. Thank you for watching this video, and we will see you in tomorrow's video where we're gonna talk all about editing your video using a mobile editing application.